with the Colts offseason officially starting and the fact that they've already started to sign some players to those future contracts, couple guys getting 1-year extensions. So it'll be interesting to see just how quickly do they start to have these other dominoes fall, right? And I thought that right now is a good time to go back and look at who the Colts have that are going to be free agents this offseason and kind of look at a list of different free agents for this offseason. And when you start here with the Colts and who they need to re-sign, or guys that they could end up re-signing, guys that were on the team this year that are going to be free agents, we're looking at Kenny Moore II, Julian Blackmon, Michael Pittman Jr., Gardner Minshew, Zach Moss, Tyquan Lewis, Grover Stewart, Rigoberto Sanchez, Taven Bryan, Ronnie Harrison Jr., Jacob Martin, Isaiah McKenzie, Tony Brown, who's already been released, Danny Pinter, and Gennard Avery. Now, also on this list is Juwan Winfrey. He's been on and off the team in 2023, but he also is technically a free agent. So the Colts have a lot of players here that they could re-sign that, some of them that they need to re-sign, right? Like if you go through this list and you're talking about guys that you'd really like to see the Colts be able to re-sign, it's going to be Kenny Moore, Julian Blackmon after just having the best season of his career, even though injuries once again kept him off the field. Michael Pittman Jr., of course, needs to be re-signed. Gardner Minshew, if he doesn't want to go try for a starting job somewhere else and he's still the best option, then maybe he ends up being the backup quarterback again. Zach Moss, who's expressed some interest in wanting to come back to the Colts and the fact that they've seen what the duo of JT and him can be. So there's a possibility that Zach Moss comes back. I assume, the pricing is going to be a big reason in whether or not that happens. But you also have Grover Stewart, need to re-sign him, keep him and Buck together. Rigoberto Sanchez, like when you're talking about specialists, like can we really go get somebody that's better than Rigoberto Sanchez? I'm just not sure that that's going to be something that's possible. Okay, but then a guy like Taven Bryan, you can let him walk. A guy like Ronnie Harrison, I'd like to see come back, but I don't know if there's a real likelihood of that happening. Jacob Martin, a guy that showed some flashes throughout the season, but we'll see what direction the Colts want to go in terms of the pass rush. I think, there are a lot of people talking about how there needs to be a more consistent pass rusher, right? We need that one dominant pass rush guy. So they might just walk away from Jacob Martin, try to find answers elsewhere, which is what I expect them to probably do. Isaiah McKenzie, probably not going to be re-signed with whatever happened. Tony Brown, again, already been released. Danny Pinter's an interesting one that could definitely end up being re-signed. Will they want to re-sign him? Will they want to go get their own guys to come in and be depth pieces on that offensive line? Arlington Hambright already getting extended for a season. So we'll see whether or not they want to bring back Danny Pinter or whether Danny Pinter wants to try to go find another opportunity out there for himself. Coming off an Achilles injury, I could see where he takes a 1-year deal to come back to the Colts and just try to stay healthy. And if he has to play, he can play and show that he can do something, then go somewhere else after that. But we'll see what happens with him. And then, again, the last guy on this list, Gennard Avery, we'll see what happens there. There was some promise, people talking about the potential of what he could be, and then he's out all year on the IR. So we'll see what happens with that and whether or not he ends up coming back and being re-signed. But the Colts have a lot of guys just in their building that they have to think about going forward. And what we're looking at right now is roughly $72 million in cap space, actually just a little over. I'm looking on Spotrac, and the number that they have the Colts at is $72,795,395. So almost $73 million. If you've been watching this channel for a little while, then you know. And if you haven't, then you don't know this. But we had talked about before about the potential of trading Braden Smith. Looking at his cap, he has the third biggest cap hit on the Colts at $16.683 million. If you look at Braden Smith over the last few years, he hasn't been able to stay on the field. Okay, and there's definitely a spot where people talk about, the way he was when he was in and how good he was this season compared to Blake Freeland and trying to compare those two. I completely understand that. But it's also because of who Braden Smith is when he is on the field that I think there is some trade value for a guy that can't stay healthy. So I think if Blake Freeland, right, Bernard Raymond, not great in his rookie season, Then you look at his second season, Bernard Raymond was really good this season. So when you look at Blake Freeland, I think with the experience that he already has, with an offseason to prepare himself mentally and to change his body how he thinks he needs to physically, I think he can come into 2024 being a lot better and being somebody that we can continue to of course, he's going to continue to have to develop, but he starts playing now. You develop him now. Maybe by the time his first contract comes up, he's cheaper than Braden Smith would have been. And you get that $16.683 million to be able to spend elsewhere, and somebody else takes responsibility of Braden Smith's contract. So there are different options that the Colts could go to open up more money, right? I think when you look at not only who the Colts have to re-sign for themselves, but who else is out on the market, there's a lot of guys that might be good fits on the Colts, and specifically wide receivers. There are a bunch of wide receivers. Looking at this list of just offensive players, I'm seeing Dalton Schultz for tight end, Mike Gesicki at tight end. And then wide receivers already on this channel. We've talked a lot about some of these wide receivers. Obviously, you have T. Higgins, Michael Pittman Jr., Mike Evans, Calvin Ridley. Then you also have other guys, other impact kind of guys. You know, Gabe Davis is going to be available this offseason. Odell Beckham Jr. has started to look good with the Ravens, right? Starting to figure out with the Ravens. Good chance he probably stays in Baltimore. But Odell Beckham Jr. has clearly shown, in my opinion, that he still has some of that Odell Beckham Jr. that we know he can be. Okay, but Tyler Boyd, serviceable 3 there in Cincinnati. He's been good for a long time. He's going to be available. Curtis Samuel, an all-purpose kind of weapon, is going to be available. KJ Osborne, player that I've really liked for a couple seasons, just never really had that opportunity with all the other talent that they have at wide receiver, right? They had Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson. Adam Thielen moves on. They draft Jordan Addison. Jordan Addison's really good. So it's been Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. But KJ Osborne is a really interesting name. There's a lot of really interesting names on this list at wide receiver. People are obviously going to bring up Paris Campbell and the possibility of bringing him back. I'm not so much a fan of that one. But then, you know, you talk about running backs and who the Colts could go after. Obviously, there's Zach Moss. If he comes back, then we probably don't worry about running backs. We also have Evan Hull, who could come back next season and be really good as a 3, and maybe he's a third down kind of back. But again, a lot of interesting names in terms of free agents, and that's just a list of offensive guys. We'll talk more about free agency as time goes on, but I just wanted to, you know, start here. I think this is a good starting point, looking at who the Colts need to re-sign, talking about, you know, some of the possibilities of guys we might end up seeing in the building through free agency. And if there's anybody that you would rather target, right, guys that are going to be free agents that you know of that you would want on the team outside of just the guys that the Colts have to re-sign, right? I'm talking about the rest of the NFL. Guys that you want the Colts to go out and get this season. You let me know down in the comments section. And of course, I appreciate you stopping by for another video. And as always, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and go Colts.